She had the walk that changed everything. In the early 1990s, when supermodels ruled the world and every runway moment was a global headline, Yasmeen Ghauri stepped onto the scene and instantly stood out. With her sharp cheekbones, graceful stride, and quiet intensity, she wasn't just another pretty face. She was a revolution on heels. Designers fought to dress her. Photographers couldn't get enough of her. And the public? They were hypnotized. Yasmeen didn't just walk the runway, she owned it. From Chanel and Gianni Versace to Victoria's Secret, she became a global icon almost overnight. But then, she vanished. At the height of her fame, just when her star seemed unstoppable, Yasmeen Ghauri stepped away from it all. No scandals, no warnings, no farewell tour, just silence. In an industry where fame is everything and staying relevant means surviving, how does someone with everything walk away? Why would one of the most celebrated models of her generation leave it all behind, seemingly without looking back? This is more than just a story about fashion. It's about identity, pressure, and what it really costs to live in the spotlight. It's about a woman who dared to choose peace over fame on her own terms. But was it really her choice? Or was something happening behind the scenes that the public never saw? In this video, we'll uncover the truth behind Yasmeen Ghauri's rise and mysterious exit from her early struggles to the runway heights few ever reach, to the silent goodbye that left the fashion world stunned. And as we piece together her journey, one question will haunt the story all the way through. Why did she leave, and will she ever come back? Keep watching, because the answers might surprise you. Yasmeen Ghauri's story didn't begin on a runway. It began in Montreal, Canada, where she was born to a German mother and a Pakistani father. From the start, she was different. Raised in a conservative household, modeling wasn't something that was encouraged or even imagined. But fate had other plans. At just 17 years old, while working at a McDonald's, she was discovered by a local hairdresser who saw something extraordinary in her tall frame and striking features. That moment would change everything. But her early steps into fashion weren't smooth. Her look, which was considered too exotic by some agencies at the time, challenged the standards of Western beauty in the late 1980s. Yet it was that exact difference that would soon make her unforgettable. In an era dominated by blonde bombshells and Eurocentric features, Yasmeen's presence was refreshing, bold, powerful, and undeniably magnetic. When she made her way to New York, the fashion capital opened its arms, and her career skyrocketed. By the early 90s, she wasn't just booking jobs, she was closing shows. Major designers like Jean-Paul Gaultier, Christian Dior, and Valentino were lining up to have her lead their collections. She appeared on the covers of Vogue and Elle, walked in the Victoria's Secret fashion show before it became a televised event, and became the face of some of the biggest campaigns of the decade. Her walk, elegant yet commanding, earned her legendary status among fashion insiders. But while the lights shone bright, there were whispers. Yasmeen didn't enjoy interviews. She rarely appeared at industry parties. She seemed distant, even during the most glamorous moments. Rumors swirled that she was uncomfortable with fame, or that the industry never fully accepted her for who she was. Some said the pressure to constantly look perfect and the emotional strain of public life had begun to weigh heavily on her. And then came the sudden shift. Right when her name was everywhere, billboards, magazines, campaigns, she began to pull away. Fewer runway appearances. Fewer public sightings. No dramatic scandal. Just absence. It left everyone wondering, was it burnout? A personal decision? Or was the fashion world so quick to lift someone up, just as quick to move on when the spotlight faded? The answers weren't clear then, and for a long time, they wouldn't be. As Yasmeen Ghauri quietly stepped away from the spotlight, the fashion world was left with more questions than answers. Behind the scenes, industry insiders began to speculate. Some whispered that she had grown tired of the constant pressure, the nonstop travel, the long hours, the intense scrutiny over every part of her appearance. Others believed there was a deeper reason, something more personal. What made it all the more puzzling was that Yasmeen was at the height of her power. She wasn't fading, she was leading. One of the quiet truths about the modeling world is how isolating it can be. Surrounded by people, yet often feeling alone. Yasmeen, known for her quiet confidence, was never the type to chase headlines. She wasn't out courting fame or drama, she simply let her work speak for itself. But as time passed, it became clear that something was pulling her away. Colleagues noticed the change. She would show up to shoots, still professional, still graceful, but more guarded. Less present. As if part of her had already left. There were talks of tension between the image she was expected to project and the life she truly wanted. For a woman with roots in both South Asian and Western culture, the fashion industry's narrow standards may have weighed more heavily than most realized. Some hinted that she struggled with how the industry tried to shape her into something she wasn't. That constant push to be more visible, more open, more glamorous, when all she really wanted was to be herself. At the same time, stories began to surface of Yasmeen's growing desire to start a family, to live life on her own terms, far from flashing cameras. But nothing was ever confirmed. She kept her personal life protected, shielded from the very industry that once adored her. Photographers tried to catch glimpses. Journalists tried to follow leads. But Yasmeen gave them nothing. No public announcement. No final walk. Just silence. And yet, that silence only made her more iconic. Years passed, and fans still searched for her name. Old runway clips resurfaced online, comments pouring in about how she had that walk, that presence. And still, no return, no interviews, no reappearances. As if she had vanished into another life completely. But was it really escape? Or a quiet rebellion against a world that demanded too much? As the years passed, Yasmeen Ghauri's absence only grew louder. In an age before social media, silence wasn't just mystery, it was power. Her name became legend, a symbol of elegance that had vanished without explanation. Even as new generations of models rose and the fashion industry evolved, Yasmeen's name kept echoing through runways and memories. Fashion blogs began to dig. Where did she go? Why had she walked away at the peak of her career? No one could say for sure, and Yasmeen wasn't talking. There were rare, almost ghost-like sightings. A blurry photo in a cafe. A mention in an old friend's interview. But there were no comebacks, no Fashion Week appearances, no front-row seats at designer shows. Just more questions. People close to her said she had found happiness in private life, marriage, motherhood, a quieter rhythm far from the catwalk. But that only deepened the mystery. Could someone really let go of that level of fame so easily? And, more importantly, why? Some fashion historians began to piece together a bigger picture. Yasmeen didn't just leave modeling. She left a system. A machine that thrives on visibility, performance, and control. For someone like her, calm, private, deeply self-aware, it was more than exhausting. It was suffocating. The fashion world is built on illusion. And maybe Yasmeen was one of the few who saw past it early on. Or maybe she had simply reached a breaking point the world never witnessed. There were rumors of one final campaign that was never released. Whispers of a shoot that went unfinished. Some say she walked off set and never came back. Others say it wasn't dramatic at all, that it was a quiet goodbye, no tears, no anger, just a final decision. But the people who were there? They never spoke publicly. Almost as if they, too, were protecting something. And then came a moment that changed everything. An old interview clip, nearly forgotten, surfaced online. In it, Yasmeen spoke, not about fashion, but about freedom. About finding peace. Her voice was soft, steady. And in those few seconds, it felt like the entire fashion world held its breath. Was this the answer they had been waiting for? Or just another layer to the mystery? Everything was building towards something. One final moment. And the truth, whatever it was closer than ever. The resurfaced interview clip felt like a key that almost unlocked something, but just as quickly, it left everything hanging. Viewers were hungry for more. What did she mean by freedom? Was it from the spotlight, the industry, or something deeper? For days, fashion forums, YouTube comments, and Reddit threads buzzed with speculation. Old fans remembered her elegance. New fans, just discovering her, were stunned by how effortlessly she outshone even today's top names. But just when the momentum felt like it might lead to answers, something unexpected happened. A former fashion editor from a major magazine came forward, anonymously claiming to have access to an unpublished feature story about Yasmeen Ghauri from the mid-90s. According to them, the piece was shelved right before publication due to editorial concerns. But the article, they said, held details that painted a different picture of her exit. It wasn't just about wanting a private life. It was about conflict, pressure behind the scenes, and what they described as Yasmeen's growing discomfort with the fashion industry's silent expectations. Suddenly, the narrative began to shift. Had she been pushed out not by scandal or failure, but by an industry that didn't know how to handle someone who refused to play the game? There were stories buried in old fashion archives of creative disagreements, of Yasmeen refusing certain roles or campaigns that didn't align with her values. And unlike many models who quietly complied, she said no. She questioned. She resisted. That resistance, some now believed, came at a cost. Then came a second twist. A well-respected former runway coach revealed in a podcast that there had been a moment, just before Yasmeen's exit, when she was offered a multi-year contract with one of the biggest fashion houses in Europe. The kind of deal that could have secured her name in the highest ranks of fashion history. But she turned it down. Completely. No negotiations, no counteroffers. Just a polite no thank you. Why? The podcast host asked the same question. The coach's reply was brief, but chilling. She told me she didn't want to sell her soul. That sentence sent shockwaves through the fashion community. Suddenly, Yasmeen's disappearance wasn't just mysterious, it felt deliberate. Strategic. Like she had seen something beneath the surface, something others ignored, and made a choice to leave before it consumed her. This wasn't just a supermodel walking away. It was a quiet revolt. The more people looked, the more inconsistencies they found in the media narrative of her retirement. Timelines didn't quite match. Some campaigns showed her face even after she had supposedly left. A few photos appeared to be from shoots no one remembered being published. It raised one big question. Had the industry tried to quietly erase or reshape her story after she walked away? The mystery wasn't fading. It was growing. And now, with layers of truth, secrets, and silence stacking on top of each other, one thing became clear. The real story of Yasmeen Ghauri was still hidden, and the fashion world might not be ready for it. In the end, the story of Yasmeen Ghauri wasn't about a dramatic fall or a shocking scandal. It was about a choice. A quiet, powerful decision to step away from something that no longer felt true. As the whispers faded and the fashion cycles moved on, Yasmeen built a life far from the glare of the runway. She got married, became a mother, and embraced a different kind of beauty, one rooted in peace, authenticity, and self-respect. For someone once called the greatest walk in fashion, it turns out her most powerful move was the one that took her off the runway completely. Years later, when asked in a rare interview about her decision to leave, Yasmeen simply said, "I wanted to live a full life. And I did." She didn't dwell on what was lost. She didn't explain herself in detail. She didn't have to. Her legacy was already etched in fashion history, in the shows she opened, the campaigns she transformed, and the quiet strength she carried behind her eyes. The industry may have tried to tell her story one way, but she reclaimed it with silence and grace. For fans who wondered if she would ever return, the answer became clear. She didn't need a comeback. She had already left on her own terms. And perhaps that's the real reason Yasmeen Ghauri is still remembered so vividly, because she broke the unspoken rule of fashion. She walked away without needing anyone's permission. Her story reminds us that sometimes real power lies not in staying visible, but in knowing when to disappear. She became a legend not just because of how she walked, but because of where she walked to. Not toward more fame, but toward freedom. And maybe, in a world obsessed with staying relevant, that's the most beautiful exit of all.